Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Flipp The Script podcast, the youth-led podcast by FlippGen, where we, the digital rebels, discuss all things digital well-being and discover ways in which we can build a healthier relationship with technology and the digital world. For those of you who don't know about FlippGen, we're a youth-led organisation aimed at empowering the next generation to build a better relationship with the digital world than we have, and we do this through education and campaigning.
Today, we're flipping the script with someone who's been making serious waves in the debate about children, screens, and what education could look like in our digital world.
Our guest is the brilliant Sophie Winkleman, an actor, writer, and campaigner who's been championing screen-free childhoods, reducing technology in schools, and co-leading the Closed Screens, Open Minds campaign, which calls for a ban on smartphones for children and return to human-centered, non-digital learning in classrooms.
So the plan is to cover some key topics around work, family life and education and well-being in the digital world before we flip the script and ask Sophie for some input on FlippGen and how we can improve our relationship with tech and how we can help the next generation to do so as well. So welcome, Sophie.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations, guys. You're heroes. I'm very excited to get to know you all.
No, you're not just an actor and a campaigner. You're first and foremost a parent of two young girls. How do you manage the daily juggle of work-life balance as a family, and what are your screen and tech rules within the home?
It's a great question. I don't manage because the iPads that their previous school gave them are their favourite objects. So I'm failing, and I think it's why I'm sort of creating good connections with lots of parents and teachers around Britain, because I'm not sitting at home crafting with them and sort of going on long walks and sort of making things with them. I'm utterly drowning in this stuff. And I just see, they were meant for learning, these iPads. But of course, the girls, even at sort of 8 and 10, learned how to get around the boring education stuff and go on to all sorts of pointless games, not harmful stuff yet, but nonsense, which kept them completely addicted and glued to these wretched things. And I'm having a nightmare. I'm not succeeding. I'm seeing it with my own kids. I'm seeing it with children across the country, getting younger and younger and younger. And it's very painful. And I'm just so excited that you young guys are taking the reins, because I think probably the most powerful piece in the media that there's been about this was the Times piece about 18 months ago with all sorts of teenagers being interviewed from around the country. I bet you all remember it. And the question by the journalist was, if all your social media was got rid of, how would you cope? And all of them said, if it was banished for all my friends as well, I'd love it. It would be amazing. I don't want this stuff. I don't want to be in this addicted treacle. I don't want to hate myself for picking up my phone every 2 seconds. I can't bear it. So I'm a struggling parent, and especially when I go and work, it takes me away from the home, and I don't know whether the people I've got to look after are being militant enough about this. And it's very hard to say to, and I often get actors to look after the girls, young actors, and it's very hard to say, just don't let them near those wretched things. They can do their homework, then lose them immediately if you don't know someone very well. I'm having a nightmare.
And looking at this perspective, do you think that this change might have to start with adults first before we can expect children to follow, especially when so much of adult life runs through screens as well?
It's such a great question, and it's one I feel quite mixed about, because so many grown-ups have their work on their phones now. And I think it's probably about communication. I think if an adult says to a child, I've got to write back to this email, I've got to just write this thing on my phone, I'm so sorry, and pretend, because the phone is so isolating, it's not like an adult holding up a newspaper where the child sort of knows what they're doing and gets on with it. There's something hostile about someone being on a phone and not listening to you. So I don't judge grown-ups who have to be on their phones. I actually really don't. And I think it's important there's a distinction between adults and children. I mean, adults drink wine with dinner, they sometimes smoke, they drive, they do all sorts of things it's fine for grown-ups to do. I just think children shouldn't even begin to think they're allowed to do this stuff. And I believe we need government intervention, because I think it's too slow and too many children are being destroyed with communities that aren't getting all together and saying, let's not do this. That's why I feel like it has to come from above.
Thank you so much. I really love your perspective on sort of that differentiation between adults and young people. You know, we have licenses and age restrictions on so many things, driving, drinking, because we don't expect young people to know how to navigate these things and act safely. And yeah, I believe we should have a similar situation with AI and other technologies, and that that's enforced properly. Now, you've spoken very candidly just now and in the past on moving your children to different schools because of their tech and screen policies, and just now the impacts on your girls themselves. What do you think effective learning can look like without screens? And how can we be sure to strike the right balance for children around analog and digital learning within the classroom? Because we don't want them to miss out. We want them to be able to build digital literacy and know tech with a K, as we say at FlippGen. But at the same time, we really want to maintain their well-being and help them learn effectively. So yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
It's such a brilliant question. I think you can become tech literate in IT classes 2 or 3 times a week, and that's where it should be limited to. It's not that hard to get good at this stuff. It's designed by geniuses, all of it, to be very instantly usable. And I think you can harness what's exciting about tech and what's inventive about tech in those lessons and learn all the important stuff like how to spot fake news, how to do robotics, sound and visual animation. All the exciting stuff should be limited to tech lessons. So I'm a fan of technology education, not ed tech, where every subject is plonked online by these slightly grim platforms. I mean, I'm not going to say any names here, but a lot of these things that schools have downloaded and that children do their work on, the sort of board members, none of them are educators. They're private equity members. And it's, I think, EdTech, the best sentence for it is it's big tech in a school uniform. Platforms are owned by a small number of people who make billions of pounds and dollars out of ruining children's eyesight, ruining their ability to concentrate, ruining their spinal formation, making them go to sleep much later, putting them on distracting machines, all in the name of education. It's a complete lie. I don't think it's a healthy way to learn. It's not a calm way to learn. And I want to start a revolution about EdTech in the way that one's beginning to start about smartphones.
Thank you so much. I really agree that we can sort of harness the good parts and teach young people about tech proficiently and properly and in a dynamic way, but then leave it there. Because, nowadays, I remember when I was at school, sort of EdTech was in almost every subject. And I've been doing some research on political and digital literacy, and it's not just harmful, but it's vastly unequal in people being able to use it effectively when you look at, socioeconomic divides and the resources schools have to teach kids to use these things effectively, which is even worse. And then it's generating profits for big tech, like you just said. So no, I wholeheartedly agree. And now on a slightly different topic, as an actor yourself, I'd love to know your thoughts on sort of the recent news of the AI actor, Tilly Norwood, being signed to a talent agency. I'm just wondering what you think the future of acting looks like and what you think this signals to young people.
I think we're letting tech relegate humanity in a very dramatic and immoral way. So I don't believe that an AI actor is interesting. It's artificial, and I think real is exciting. This is the thing about AI. We've got to remember what it stands for. It's not real. It's fake. And it's why, sorry to come back to education, I'll come back to your other brilliant points in a minute. AI in education, it's artificial intelligence, and it's making an artificial assistant do all your work for you. That is not an assistant. It's a damaging force in your life that's stopping you do all. You've all been really well educated. Those building blocks of doing the slightly boring hard stuff in your education are so important, and you don't get those skills back. So outsourcing children's work to ChatGPT and other large language models is a travesty. It's just making our children's brains into floppy sort of amoeba when they should be tough and getting tougher and building resilience. And I think academic resilience is also related to personal resilience. In that if you can crack a really annoying hard essay and write it out in bloody rough first and do your first draft and then do your second one, it is quite boring and it's hard, but it's very important to get through those boring, thick forests. It's important. And if you just say to AI, just tell me the most important philosophers' views on freedom and then put them in a good order, that's not helpful. That's deeply damaging. In terms of AI actors, I mean, it's already happening to a lot of my friends. I do voice work as well, and I have actor friends who don't actually do stage or TV or film. They just are magicians with their voices. And there's something very beautiful about going into a crummy studio in sort of Tottenham and all these actors who are just voice actors creating these extraordinary worlds with just their voices. They're all in tracksuit bottoms, and they're sort of playing knights of the medieval realm, and you're instantly transported, I think even more than visually. It's just stunning. And it's a real skill, and it's being eroded by, advertisers and corporations and even, fiction publishers choosing to go with AI. A dear friend did a voice for a long time for a very big company, and it was her meal ticket. It was every year she'd get this check and she'd go and do the, renewals of the ads for this company. And she was told last year that she's being replaced with AI. She's got 3 children. She's got high bills. She's got an ill husband. I don't approve of this. I'm sorry. I think these huge companies have a moral obligation not to replace human beings. To render ourselves obsolete in the name of progress is not progress. And, I have lots of young cousins who are very hardworking. They've done wonderful university degrees, and they're in their late 20s and haven't found a meaningful job. And it's not through lack of trying. It's just, computers are doing what they would have done in the old days, and they can't train. And I think that's terrifying.
Thank you so much. I think it's just so important. I think this idea that we are letting humanity go for the favor of progress. You're right, it isn't progress necessarily. It's like an erasure, and it's so sad for young people growing up with such big dreams, and then said dreams are just being like disabled because it's being replaced with a cheaper or technology forward, flashy alternative. So thank you so
Efficient,
much. I'll pass
free.
on. Yeah, no. I'll pass on to Paddy now on your campaign.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to concur with Cosima. That's kind of so interesting. And I've been looking at articles about schools just using AI now in America and people using AI as accountants. And I kind of think, what's the point on living if we're just going to be taught by AI to deal with AI? And it was kind of struck me how you were talking about like the mundane. To be mundane is to be human. And you've got to do all those longer, hard tasks to, see the exciting things as exciting. But kind of coming on to the campaigns, your campaign Closed Screens Open Mind is really cool. And I kind of just wanted to start off by exploring how you came up with it. Was there a moment where you thought something needs to change, or was it a gradual process?
It's actually my friend Arlene who runs it, and Anna Grant. The 2 women we all realised in lockdown how awful it was for children to online learn. It was clearly a terribly agitating, shallow, rubbish way of educating children. They all went mad. No child learned effectively during lockdown. And the fact that human beings didn't immediately come back into the picture after lockdowns and schools just went, that's quite efficient, and it will mark itself, and sometimes the teachers can be absent, and the schools have spent a load of money on this stuff, so let's just keep it. It's like, no, guys, have a look at Sweden, who invested billions in edtech. The children weren't functioning well academically or emotionally, and they had the balls, to say, okay, we've made a big, very expensive mistake. We're getting rid of it. And we're going back to books, pen and paper, and they're all thriving. We've got to find some courage. So Closed Screens, Open Minds is set up by those two mothers, and I give them all my stuff that I do, because even though we're all working very closely together, I refuse to join any social media, even though it would be terribly helpful to my message. I want to try and show young people that they can do things without it, which is a mad thing to try and do. But when they both said, come on, let's do this thing, all three of us, I said, I can't be part of any social media. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I want to show everyone that it's possible to live a meaningful, effective life without it. So anyway, they run the Instagram and I give them everything I do immediately, and they're wonderful. And we're getting lots of lovely, devoted followers around the world, and it's very heartening.
Yeah, that's amazing. I kind of reflect because something struck me. I was talking to my sister, who's a newly qualified teacher, and I was asking about her homework marking. And she said she doesn't have to do any because her students just do it, and she just gets a spreadsheet to see whether they've done it online. And I kind of thought, even since I was at school before COVID, that wasn't really the case. It was kind of coming in, and it kind of shocked me. But you say, and you talk about the change that we need to go back to kind of move away from screens. How can we do that? Is it a thing you talked earlier about regulation, or does it have to be a societal change in beliefs as well?
It's a good question. I think it has to be both. I think, sadly, a few more years will roll on by without people really understanding what's happening to children in the classroom. Like with smartphones and social media, it's taking way too long. I think parents will gradually realise their children aren't learning well. The more ambitious children will realise they're not learning well and get frustrated and angry. And I think you're right. I think it's a moral obligation of governments and policymakers and educators to put teachers at the forefront of education. It's not only for education. Children in tough homes need teachers to spot if they're okay or not, to, safeguard. That human connection with a teacher can be the most important connection in a deprived child's entire world. I'm not from a deprived background, but I had a very bad time at school, and my parents were working very long hours, and my teacher was my salvation. My English teacher was the reason I kept going into school. If she hadn't been there, I'd have just skived off. I wouldn't have gone in. So when I read about the school you mentioned, those alpha schools with AI in the morning and then play in the afternoon, fine, great for play in the afternoon. It's so depressing thinking that's considered super shiny and exciting. A kid on a screen taught by an artificial tutor for 2 hours. That's revolting. That's nothing to be excited about. That's really dystopian.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the human relationship is so important, and teachers should be so much more than just teaching you about, maths, English, history. They should be about that, having that mentor, having that compassionate person who can be in your corner. So I really agree. So coming on to...
Sorry, Paddy. I also think, in response to your question, my answer should have been, I think teachers need to make a loud noise about this, and the teachers' unions, because not only for their jobs, which are are going to be moving towards extinction, but because they go into the profession because they love children and they want to light the candle of self-improvement and ambition in children. And I think I feel most strongly about it because I've been to very deprived areas of Britain where, as I say, the teacher is the shining light in so many children's lives. And to sort of to actually abolish that in favour of artificial rubbish which makes a few people very rich, it's not something Britain should be okay with. We have to stand up against that. And teachers' unions should be probably fighting the loudest, as it takes parents a long time to realise, governments a long time to realise. They're all far too slow. So teachers should be saying, no, wait.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that is a change that comes. And coming on to a speech you gave a few months back at the ARC conference, you mentioned a line which kind of very much chimes with what we're doing at FlippGen. Talked about we must flip the current argument on its head and ask, where is evidence to prove that it is safe? And I think that's really interesting because all you hear about is the progress, especially from the government, about how we can use AI. But do you think it's really important to actually flip that question and ask about, what are the negative impacts, and what are some of the negative impacts you can see AI and technology having on children?
And I think these companies that come into our schools should have to get third-party certification to prove effectiveness. And the percentage of these edtech and AI and education firms that do that is something like 7%. It's completely criminal. And it has to be external bodies doing these tests saying, okay, why is this better? How is this better than book, paper and pen and a human teacher? If it can be proved better by all sorts of external, serious, moral bodies, brilliant, let's use it. But I don't think any of them would pass the test. I might be wrong. I'd love to be wrong, actually. But I think there has to be way more scrutiny and, legal obligation to prove efficacy and effectiveness and superiority to what's gone before. And I don't believe they will prove that teachers aren't the most important person in a classroom. It's one of the American campaigners, Emily Churkin, calls it the teacher being relegated from sage on the stage to guide on the side. And that's so brilliant. What teacher wants to trudge around the classroom being the centurion, making kids are staying on task rather than going onto YouTube? That's not why great people go into teaching.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's such a great quote. And we were talking to somebody last week on the podcast, and she kind of agreed and said that if you look at all the key people who kind of are on the ground and know what's going on, they're all agreeing that something needs to change. But there seems to be that disconnect between what they're saying, I think like the former head of Ofsted and that kind of thing, and head of the teachers union, and what the government are kind of hearing. So just going to pass on to Allegra now to ask a few more questions on this topic.
Yeah, I guess focusing specifically on childhood and how obviously teachers and school is such a massive part of growing up and of being a child and then becoming a young adult before you then go on to the rest of the world. But you described previously the current situation as the digital destruction of childhood. Can you paint us a picture of what childhood looked like before screens took over and what we've lost? Perhaps the decline of children reading and enjoying books. And do you think we can ever go back to that ideal in our digital world?
Such a good question. I think the digital destruction of childhood, it's not only about books, interestingly, although that's probably the biggest issue. It's also to do with children getting bored is very, very important, because that's when creativity kicks in. That's when you think, oh my God, it's Saturday afternoon, it's raining and I'm so bored. That's when you write your own stories or make up something or invent something or you draw something or you pick up a book and you do a sort of play with your sibling or just that's when inventing your own fun happens. And it's when you become active in creating your own world that suits you. And if you're just a passive vessel for other people's content from your iPad, that will never kick in and you will never become a creative force. And I believe everyone can be creative. Everyone. Doesn't matter. The old cliches of, there's the sort of arty ones who are creative, and then there's the rubbish. Mathematicians are gloriously creative. Everyone can be creative. But I think it only happens. It's like our greatest geniuses. They had their eureka moment when they just got so bored. They focused on one thing for hours. And I think we're just missing out on so much precious human capital because people are watching TikTok videos of sort of funny pet clips for hours, and they're just being passive, and I think that's a tragedy. And of course, reading, the fact that no child can focus on reading anymore, they're not interested in reading, it's too hard, it's too boring, is and totally the same with my own children, and that's the only thing I'm strict about. I'm very lazy in most ways, but my husband and I try and get them to read. We read all together when we're here every night for sort of 20 minutes. The only way we can do it, because if I said go up to your room and read, no chance. So we have to be in our room all reading together. And it's a muscle you have to exercise. And I don't mean that the reading thing in a ghastly sort of elitist, irritating way. It should be for everyone. It's not expensive. It's just a bit of time to widen that focus. Because I think one of the harms that's happening it's not only children seeing revolting things online which never leave their souls, it's the shortening of the concentration span. And again, with my young cousins, I notice it in that they get so bored in films. They're just like, oh my God, what? And they grab their phones and they go down to the kitchen, they come back in, they're just, and me at 45, I'm going, look at this tension. They're like, it's not tension, it's boring. They're not saying anything to each other. And I just can't cope. And it's happening to me. If I get sent a very long, in-depth article on a subject I'm interested in, I have to slightly brace myself and think, Sophie, stay on task. Don't go and check that WhatsApp thing. Don't go and check that. It's terrifying. And these humongous companies are ripping apart our minds. Yeah. What did you ask again, Allegra? I went off task. I went off-piste.
No, it's
Perfect childhood. Boredom plus reading. And I said in that speech you mentioned that a really healthy childhood, everything in it is free. It's love, obviously, is the most important ingredient by much more than any of the other things. But the rest of it is running outside, drawing a picture, reading a book. Okay, it's not completely free, but I'm not talking about playing the cello and going skiing. I'm talking about simple things that build up a child's inner world. I want that to be available to all children. It's part of social mobility, and that's why it needs to be a government-led movement. Children in this country, if they didn't have money, used to be fine. They'd go to the grammar school and they'd learn, and they wouldn't be distracted by rubbish, and the ambitious ones would do brilliantly. And that's not happening anymore. And it's partly because of poverty, but it's not only that. It's because we're letting children in more unsupervised homes stay up all night long on social media and phones. They go into schools, they fall asleep in class, they eat rubbishy junk to try and stay awake. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this stuff is life-destroying.
Thank you for that, Sophie. I really enjoyed your point about the power of boredom and the learning power that it can have on children and young people as they are developing and growing. I think Cosima now is going to talk about some of your collaborators, so we'll hear from her.
Yeah, no, thank you so much as well for your responses just now. I beyond wholeheartedly agree with basically everything you said. I think, yeah, it's so powerful and so important to make a point of. And on that, on people speaking up, you've collaborated with several of your public-facing peers on this issue. How important is it to have these high-profile voices speaking out? Do you think there's room to combine said voices with those young people with lived experiences and youth advocates such as the Rebels and other change makers? And what has the policy response and wider public reception been like so far?
I think probably you guys are the most important cohort in this, because younger children than you aren't going to look at people like me and say, do you know what, I'm going to do what she says. But they'll look at cool young kids, sorry, not kids, but, young people like you and go, oh, and they'll listen because there's more of an immediate relationship. So I'm so excited about you guys. It's what this movement's been. I know you've been doing it for a long time, but I'm so excited your profile's growing so quickly. It's really exciting. I love people like Freya India, who've been writing so poetically on this subject for a long time. I think she coined that Greek term that I now can't remember, of a nostalgia for something she never knew. And she describes it as, I've never been to a concert where people haven't filmed the act rather than just watched it. I haven't been in a room where we're all just crying with laughter at something someone said. We're all on our phones. I haven't done these basic steps that my parents had in their youth that added a sort of romance and poetry to their, sorry to be pretentious, but it's true, about growing up and having real human connection all the time. I think it's an underused word in this digital life we've all got, in that romance is dying. Being able to just meet someone serendipitously, not know anything about them, and gently find out about each other is a beautiful way to get close to someone, whether it's friendship or whether it's more than that. And being able to instantly just hook up with someone, see what their Instagram following's like, see that they've actually gone to that party without you the night before, that's pretty anxious, not great. Maybe I have to sleep with them quickly. I mean, it's all so depressing. And I'm very happy that you guys are reclaiming that space, saying it doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to share everything. You don't have to tag everyone. You don't have to follow everyone. An example that I met before you guys, I was on an acting job, and it was an actress called Sophie Thompson, brilliant actress. And she said that her son had just joined Central St. Martin's, the art college. And she said she was a bit worried about him because he refused to get a smartphone, and she just didn't know how he was going to be and how he was going to connect with anyone. Anyway, I bumped into her sort of 6 months later, and she said, "You won't believe it. He's the coolest kid in town. Everyone wants a piece of him. No one knows anything about him. The girls are insane about him. The boys are sort of getting rid of their phones and going brick like he did." And it's just set off a revolution in all the artists saying, I don't need to do this. So he was the first young person I heard about who just turned his back on the whole phenomenon that's captured us all. And I never forgot about him. And I thought that's the way to do it, to make it cool not to be on it rather than to be all over the place like a steak on a plate going, judge me, look at me, like me. That's not cool. That's not what... And it's very embarrassing when 45-year-olds say the word cool. You've got to teach me a better word. But it's not something to aspire to. And I also think, sorry to bang on, I also think I want young people like you guys to get back the sanctity of a bit of privacy. There's not anything to be gained by sharing everything you're doing, everything you think about stuff. That might change in a few years. It kind of tethers you to a tribe, which none of you should be doing. You should be constantly open-minded and changing. And I think it's I think it's not human to share everything for all sorts of strangers, even a huge group of friends. It makes you naked in an unhealthy, sensitizing way. And I think we should all get back the idea that we can be a little bit more private without losing a social life.
Thank you so much. I definitely agree. I think it's so important to recognize the power of youth voice in these spaces. I've been sort of operating within it for quite a few years, talking to tech companies, talking to government and everything else. And it never fails to amaze me how powerful it is to hear from young people telling someone in power how something personally affects them, and watching the reaction and seeing how much of a difference that can make on the turnaround of things happening and everything else. And so I think it's equally very, very important to elevate those experiences and those voices. And I also think it's so important, like you said, just to have that privacy and to be able to stay offline. I know for me, trying to balance wanting to sort of advance in career and all of that, and at the same time not having to reveal everything. Everyone my age is becoming a LinkedIn warrior and posting everything they do, and it becomes about that. It becomes about the recognition and not the act. And I think it's a really easy trap to fall into, because that's how the algorithm is designed, and it's how these social media platforms are designed in themselves, even, Instagram and everything. We spoke with Adele Walton a few weeks ago on addictive algorithms, and she said just that. It becomes about, the recognition and not what you're doing it for. And it becomes really easy, even if you're doing it for the right reasons, to fall into that trap.
Granted that you say that about LinkedIn, because it used to be so dry and boring, and it really was just people's jobs and that's it. And now people are banging on about boring stuff they believe in and their marathons on the weekend and the political causes they're behind. And who cares? LinkedIn's not supposed to be like sort of Instagram or something where that's a showing off platform. And now LinkedIn's a really embarrassing version of Instagram. It's agonizing. People have got to get off that thing. It's awful.
It's like corporate Instagram. It's
true.
So bad.
Grimstagram.
My next question is, some people argue, on the flip side, that social media can build a sense of community, can foster creativity, potentially by giving the sort of digital resources to those that can't afford perhaps the physical access to certain, creative skills and things like that. Do you think there's any version of social media that could be healthy for children if it was regulated, moderated, people were taught how to use it? Or do you think it's about completely sort of wiping it off?
It's such a good question. Do you know, I've never thought about it, quite embarrassingly. I don't know if there's a great version of social media for children, simply because, you know, its USP is being a huge collective. And I think anywhere that the herd can stampede is dangerous for children. Even if it's very, very harmless, you know, you write something you think's funny on WhatsApp or a sort of group messaging thing and no one puts a laughing face emoji. That sent my 12-year-old's best friend into such a state when she was here the other day. She went, why didn't people find that funny? It's so funny. Shall I delete it? No, it's been there for too long. And I thought, whoa, this is WhatsApp and it's a funny thing you've written and I'm seeing this volley of anxiety. And I hadn't thought about it in that way before. And I just thought of the more harmful concentration destroying aspect of it. But I really don't know. It's a great question. I'm afraid I just don't know if there's if someone presented an idea of safe social media, I'd be interested to see it. But I think in general, anything that gets children off screens is good rather than on them in a safe way. I just don't think there's much merit in screens in general for young people.
No, I definitely see it and agree in the fact that we've never seen an alternative. We've never seen a social media that is safe. We've never seen a social media that is designed for children with their well-being in mind. It's been designed with the well-being of profits and, you know, those kinds of maximizations. And so I'll pass on to Paddy.
Yeah, perfect kind of segue into my question about, so you mentioned earlier that you don't have social media and you hate Instagram and that kind of thing, which I have some admiration for, and I wish I could get to that point. But, and also you talked about, you know, young people kind of realizing that this is actually bad for them. But in this world where we're surrounded by social media and the digital and the digital space, what can young people do to kind of start removing themselves from that and start taking steps to a more positive relationship with tech?
Well, I think you guys are the role models for that. You're the anarchists of this generation, turning your back on big tech, going, you're not going to decide how I lead my life. You're not going to make me an addicted person who just stays in for 12 hours, connecting with people online and not knowing how to have a real conversation in true life anymore. You're not going to do that. So you're the sort of punk generation, you're the revolutionaries. And I think it's you who are going to do that. I would say, what did you ask me? I've completely forgotten. What was your question?
So,
gone out of my
yeah,
brain.
no, I think you've answered, but if for a young person listening, like we're three people here who've grown up with this social media age and a lot of people listening will, what's the first step? It's quite drastic to delete all social media, but what's a small step that people can take to start moving in that direction?
One should look up this Spanish movement called OFF. It's the OFF movement, and it's encouraging all teenagers and actually adults to turn off their social media just for February and see how it goes. It's like a sort of fast, see how they feel. You could just check that out because it's very interesting. And also maybe just agree with your very best friends just to get rid of one, platform for 2 weeks. See how it feels not to have Instagram for a couple of weeks. And it would be so interesting if you guys could sort of like record how your friends are feeling. Some of them might miss it and go, do you know what? I miss it. I'm addicted, but I like it. It's creative for me and it's fun. And I know it's not great for me, but I'll get there eventually. I'll stop it when I'm 25 or 26. I'm enjoying it. And some might say, what? The freedom is just ridiculous. I'm starting to think, I don't know if you guys read James Marriott in the Times, but he's started getting rid of his social media and he's now got a burner phone. And his articles are getting more and more profound and philosophical and intelligent. And he said that's not because of his innate ability. It's because he doesn't have all that noise in his brain anymore. He's able to really think. And all of us are like that. So I think it's just little steps of deleting something for a couple of weeks and seeing how it makes you feel. And it has to be a couple of weeks. It can't be a couple of days or you'll still be in the addiction phase of going crazy. Just chart how you feel after a couple of weeks. Snapchat's pretty unhealthy, I think. It's really bad. You're worried you're going to miss out on all the funny things in the conversation. You're not going to do the funny reply, and it makes the brain crazy, I think, Snapchat. And it's one of those things that, again, started out quite fun, and now people are realizing it's brain melting. Like, not as bad as TikTok, but I don't think it's hugely positive. Anyway, yeah, little baby steps, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I love the description of us as anarchists and kind of as rebels and punk. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that one. Handing over to Allegra for the final question, I think.
Carrying on with your point about kind of reducing the noise and all the background haze that's kind of happening because of how much we're using digital screens and technology. In a world of instant gratification, how can young people rediscover the joy of being unstimulated and using their imagination?
It's such a good question. I think it'll be quite a long, painful process because we've allowed young people to use this stuff ever since they were sort of, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I think it'll be like coming off a drug. I think the brain will be panicked for a while, thinking, where is all this stuff I'm used to? And where's all that dopamine? And my brain's usually like a sort of zinging jukebox or, some kind of casino toy that's constantly lighting up. And now it's just billowing winds and I'm in a panic. So I think young people should expect to feel surreal for a few days, a few weeks. And then they'll start noticing the birdsong and they'll start looking up instead of down and they'll start feeling more meditative and they won't have to plug into mindfulness apps because they'll get it naturally by being on the top of the bus and just looking out of the window. This is something that I fight against in schools, putting these poor young children through mindfulness lessons, telling them to think really hard about their lives. It's making them all sob. No one wants to put a bright torch on in their lives and think of the things they're scared about and grateful for. And that's ridiculous. You get that just make them draw for half an hour with some pencils. Just do something natural, which naturally calms your mind. So yeah, that was a segue, but I'd say accept the panic that's going to happen, accept okay, this isn't suiting me, get beyond that. And I think your just general life blood pressure will go down and you'll start thinking, noticing, you'll start making more connections with just people around you, which is so precious. Just little moments with strangers. It's all part of the sort of orchestra of life that we've lost, and we're getting used to this artificial noise all the time, and you've got to start hearing and seeing and using all your senses in a more organic way. And I think people will hopefully get addicted to that instead and not want to go back to this fake stuff.
I completely agree. Like, just taking more time to think about the world around you and like unplugging, not necessarily having your headphones in when you're walking to school or to uni in the mornings, just staring out the window, seeing what goes by. I completely agree. I think now Paddy is going to lead the last bit of the podcast.
Yeah, so the final bit is kind of a quick fire flip the script. So we're going to ask for your advice on the things we do at FlippGen, kind of focus on the 3 pillars of FlippGen. So I'm going to start with education. If you're a Gen Z digital rebel, what key piece of information would you want to educate a Gen A about?
It's controlling you. You're not controlling it. There are loads of geniuses keeping you glued to this thing. And join the revolution with the rebels. Join the punk movement. Turn your back on it. Put the stupid thing in a drawer and go out for a walk. Just start by stepping away. Notice the signs of addiction when you're feeling twitchy and you want your phone, you want to open this and that and the other. That's addiction. And you're far too young and precious to be an addict. Making a few people in, California very, very rich. Say no to that. It's a kind of power to the people moment. It's basically saying no and taking control of your own imagination, taking control of your brain, taking control of your heart. It's all linked. So turn away and join the revolution.
Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, it's so important. And passing on to Allegra now, I think.
Now about regulation. If you're a Gen Z digital rebel, what one change to the digital regulation would you be campaigning for and why?
For me, even though I think smartphones and social media are a disaster, there are a lot of very powerful voices in this sphere, mainly you guys. It's got to come from the young. I would stop ed tech and I would go back to books, apart from for technology education, fine. IT lessons, fine. Everything else, it's like the slow food movement. It's, get local, get slow, don't get all the fast junk. And I think ed tech, social media, all that stuff, it's fast. And I think we have to just calm down and go a bit slower, and we'd all feel so much more attuned with the universe. It sounds so pretentious, but I really mean it. And attuned to people around us in a proper, connected way. Social media isn't connecting, it's isolating, and it's anxiety-inducing. You're not making proper connections at all. Doing a thumbs up on something or liking something, that's not a proper connection. It's fake. So say hello to the real stuff and turn your back on the fake stuff.
The last question to close off the podcast. Aside from this fabulous episode, is there any way, or how do you think that FlippGen and their movement and Closed Screens Open Mind and yourself could uplift each other? Is there any room or a way in which anything could come together, or in a perfect world that it would?
Yes, we should all have an in-person event with people who agree with us and just have a sort of massive sort of party in a park and just meet up and actually speak to each other and leave these damn things turned off. Live meetings, supporting each other, spreading the word, and I think this will ripple like wildfire, and I think we will be the stronger in a year or two. And I just want it to get so we're the majority, not the minority. That's the massive aim. And I want it to become so children and teenagers think, why the hell would I do that? Why would I share every single thing I'm doing and wait for likes like a loser and panic if I don't hear back from that cool person at school and put photographs of me in this cafe with this cappuccino? Why the hell would I do that? Why don't I keep some mystery around myself? Why don't I keep some privacy? Why don't I keep some modesty? I don't need to show off that I did this. That's not who I am, and I refuse to be that molded that way. I'm not going to do it. It's all about revolution and rebellion, which is why you guys are so key to this movement. And very quickly, I know I'm not allowed to ask questions, but I really want to quickly know how you all came to say no. I'm so interested. Am I allowed to know that, or is it? Can I find out? What was the turning point for all of you where you thought, I'm not just going to be one of these sea creatures who just goes with the flow?
It's been a sort of gradual process, because it was sort of like a series of events. I feel like for me at school, a lot of my peers and myself included were so negatively impacted, especially by the sort of superficial standards being put out online. And then especially in the past year or two, where we've seen this resurgence of such negative body talk and everything else. I'm so sick of seeing it. And I think it's so damaging. And I was like, I've got to practice what I preach, because I can't sit there telling other people to ignore all this ridiculous fake stuff if I'm not ignoring it myself. So that was my experience.
Brilliant. And as a mother of young girls, that means a huge amount to me, because I think there's something very biological that happens to girls where they are so desperate to fit in ways a bit more acute than boys. And they also like having gods. Girls like worshipping someone or something, whether it's posters on their wall of a pop star, or, they're followers at a certain young age, I don't know, 9 to 13 or something. And seeing these people with tons of followers with stuff done to their face and their bodies, and they're clearly not eating, and they've had all sorts of work done far too young, it's just disgusting. So well done you.
So my background is kind of in mental health campaigning and seeing the mental health impact of smartphones on everybody I know. And I lost a friend early this year. And I think a large part of that was about that kind of Instagram and technology. So that was kind of when I decided that, I don't want to stand for this anymore. I want to make a change to one of the root causes of all the mental health issues we're seeing now. And yeah, so I decided to get into kind of the digital world campaigning, which has been brilliant.
Brilliant. Good on you.
I guess for me, I got into FlippGen through their For Us campaign because I am really interested in AI ethics and technology ethics. And then when my phone broke about 9 months ago, and I ended up just having to essentially use a brick phone for a while. It made me realize actually this is a really enjoyable existence. And then I got into like Flip, like this side of Flip. That's when I then found out about FlippGen and the other side. And ever since then, I've really been kind of making sure that social media and my digital use, when it doesn't come down to my like philosophical research on it, takes a step back in being such a big part of my life. So I'll talk about some key takeaways from the session. So thank you so much, Sophie, for taking part in our podcast today. Things we want our audience to think about includes Sophie's discussions on the importance of communication when fostering healthier digital habits amongst parents and children, and also for digital literacy to be taught and limited to technology lessons, and not being a part of every single subject and every single class. Also, we really appreciated Sophie's thoughts on the mundanity of being human and the power of boredom and the learning possible from its teaching, as well as how unplugging yourself from screens and the digital world will help young people and children develop mindfulness naturally and be more in tune with the people they meet and the world around them. So once again, another big thank you to Sophie and to all our audience members. Remember to check out FlippGen.com for more information, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Allegra,
Thank
did you
you.
do that? Did you do that through AI? That summary that was unbelievable. How the hell did you do that so quickly? That's amazing. The human brain. Unbelievable. What a pleasure to meet you all. Stay in loads of touch and tell me how I can support you, and I'll do the same.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Of course, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.